Hello, and welcome. We are so glad to have you here today. We have got a very experienced speaker who I'm going to share more about in just a moment, but I will introduce myself first. My name is Jenny Anchondo, and I'm here as the host and moderator of today's event, with the topic being culture versus climate, the hidden forces driving performance and well-being. So what we will do here now is tell you about our speaker, and she is somebody that I have interviewed now several times on this platform. Each time she brings it, each time she shares a wealth of information. Ana Hernando is a dynamic speaker, leader, coach, and educator with a passion for helping people and organizations align with purpose and align with action. So where is she serving right now? She is in a consultant leadership role at Instaco Global Logistics, which she can tell us more about. But essentially there, she is really kind of famous for driving performance with heart-centered strategy and a commitment to growth. In terms of her own education, she has certainly brought it with that. She holds a doctorate in performance psychology with research focused on moral distress, highlighting her deep understanding of values-driven leadership in high pressure environments. Raise your hand if you need that. I know this is something that a lot of us are going to be able to, glean some information from. So she's also a certified wellness and lifestyle coach and a certified self-talk trainer. I've got so many questions about that. I will also tell you this is part one in a two-part series. So we get to learn from her for 2 weeks in a row and really sort of let some of these principles sink in. Without further ado, I will mute myself and hand it over to you. Good to see you, Anna.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm always honored and blessed to be able to contribute to SARE. I love their events. I love what their message and their mission is. So I'm deeply honored to be here. So I'm going to just share my screen and then we can just really dive in since we have a really meaty topic, if you will. I absolutely love this. Today I'm going to share about culture versus climate and those hidden forces driving business and performance. So, the last 5 years, I've been researching and studying the topic of moral distress. And not too many people really know what moral distress is, but it's experienced by employees in the workplace when they're faced with a moral dilemma and they know the right thing in their heart, they know the right ethical thing to do, but there's a workplace constraint. There's something in the workplace that's inhibiting them and preventing them from taking that action. And that really doesn't sit well with them. And so I've spent the last 5 years studying that in very high pressured area in healthcare. And so what the research shows is that moral distress is like this catalyst to burnout. So we have this moral distressing incident, and then it just keeps building and building and building. And then it just creates this whole other thing that fosters into burnout. And so that then leads on to high turnover and low productivity, and can even affect customer service in a great way by this negative feeling or interaction, or even just an aura that employees can give off to customers and clients. So, my research revealed that the corporate culture of a workplace, when it is misaligned with the actual climate of that place, it's the perfect environment for that moral distress to occur. So, today I'm going to share with you the how and why the alignment of culture and climate is vital to the workplace well being. And you'll see on my first slide that there is a QR code down there. That is actually a free gift for anyone that is on the webinar. It is a climate versus culture audit tool that you can access and then just kind of go through the audit tool and see where your company lays and what you might be able to do about it. My intention today is for you guys to be able to differentiate between organizational culture and climate and articulate why they're both critical. It's not one over the other. The two have to work together in order for business to be successful. So if you can identify the misalignment between the two and how it impacts your employee engagement and performance and those outcomes that affect your customers. We're going to look at applying some strategies to assess and align organizational culture and climate for the small to mid-sized business. So if you're thinking, I work in this huge corporation, I want you to look in your team, your department. You don't have to impact the entire company, but if you just kind of look at where do you play, what's your sandbox that you get to play in, and see how you can have an impact there. And then we'll also talk about evaluating the role of leadership and the systems that shape a psychologically safe and value-driven environment. Again, I'm very passionate about workplace culture. You know, this conversation goes beyond HR. It's really about how we treat people and how that shows up in results. One of my favorite authors for workplace culture and just systems is Patrick Luciani. And he says if you can get all the right people, all the people in the organization rowing in that same direction, you will dominate the industry. So today is about learning how to get everyone rowing together by aligning the culture and the climate. So many leaders assume that performance problems stem from strategy. You'll see your leaders, or you might even participate this in, well, we're going to have a strategic weekend. We're going to have a leadership retreat so we can talk strategy and we're going to hash things out and we're going to problem solve. Well, often it's not strategy. It's the culture and climate causing friction. You can actually have the best strategy in the world. But if your team doesn't feel safe, supported, recognized, appreciated, or there's alignment, their strategy is not going to take root. When you highlight the organizational health, it'll trump strategy, finance, and even marketing all day long. A cohesive team and clear culture drive everything else. Culture and climate issues are often the silent killers. They have low morale, you have passive disengagement, and even that quiet quitting. You know that when you have a meeting, we've all been in one where you have that meeting and they're all like, okay, everybody, what are your thoughts? What are you thinking? And it's crickets. Nobody's saying anything. Or you get somebody who looks at somebody else and there's an eye roll. That right there speaks volumes that the climate of that team, of the organization, is not in alignment with the, hey, let's share our ideas. They're not congruent. Teams don't break because of big moments. They break because of thousands small ones that go unaddressed. You may be familiar with John Wooden. He was this very famous basketball coach. He wrote a book on leadership, and he's like, I think, the most winningest coach in all of basketball. And he took the first day of practice, the whole practice, to teach his players how to properly put on their socks. You think they've been playing basketball forever. They should know how to put on their socks. And sometimes we think that in the workplace. You've been in this role forever. You should know how to do your job. You should know how to get with the team. You should be on the program, right? But did anybody stop, take the time, and teach this person, share with this person how to properly do what it is that you're asking them to do? Wooden teaches his players how to put on their socks because he knows that small details prevent big problems. And this is the job of leadership. So why does this matter? 70% of change efforts, there's a cultural resistance. And we've heard this too. Everybody's resistant to change. We don't like change. We don't like change. Well, the one thing that's consistent in the whole entire world is that there's going to be change. It's the one thing you can count on. 68% of employees disengage in toxic climates. 68%. So look at your environment. If it's toxic, you're losing 68% of your productivity. If you have a toxic environment, you've got to address it. You're going to lose good people And you're only going to get icky ones in because you're only going to get those people who feed more into that toxicity. And because of those two things combined, you have a 3% turnover rate because of the misaligned organization. When you are out of alignment, you do not go anywhere. Think of culture as the unwritten rules and the shared beliefs. Sometimes they're written rules, sometimes they're those core values we hear all about. You go to a company and they say, these are our core values, right? And so the truth is that culture is the unwritten rules and the shared belief. It's what people do when no one is watching. Now, I mentioned my research, and a lot of things happen in healthcare that most people don't get to see. If you will, it's behind the curtain, right? Because if we're sick, we don't want to know that there's bad stuff going on behind the curtain. We want to make sure that we want to know that that person who's working with us and treating us, they got it all together and they're happy and they're glad to be there taking care of us. We don't want to know what's behind the curtain. And many of those healthcare workers really put on a good front because what they're dealing with, a majority of them, is that misalignment between culture and climate. You've probably walked into a hospital facility or a skilled nursing facility or rehab facility, and even your company might have this. And you see their core values written on the wall, or there'll be some graphic that has their core values. And typically in healthcare, it'll say patient-centered care, compassion, which you hope if you're in healthcare, somebody's going to be taking care of you with compassion. But these are actually beyond core pillars. They'll call them pillars of the hospital or pillars of the healthcare facility. And yet that's not what the employees, the healthcare workers experience. Because when we say, when someone says compassion, our core value is compassion. And yet a doctor, a nurse, a therapist is hearing, this person doesn't have enough money to pay for services, or this person is out of money, or this person isn't as sick as this person, move them through the system. That's a message. That's not compassionate care. So you have this incongruence. Climate is that emotional tone. How does it feel to work in your facility? How do your coworkers feel about working there? How do you feel? Are people energized or burned out? In my study on healthcare providers and moral distress, people shared with me that they actually sat in their car before going for their shift and had to literally talk themselves up to get out of the car to go in and care for the patients because the climate was so icky and the values did not match that they literally sat there. Is that the kind of workplace you want to be in? Is that the kind of workplace you want your employees to be a part of? Culture and climate influence each other constantly, and you can't change one without it impacting the other. In the book, The Advantage, it's emphasized that healthy organizations have a clear identity. And they don't just talk about values, they actually behave them, they live them, they model them. A healthy culture is your roots, and the climate is the health of the soil around them. And you need both. In order for your plant to thrive, that soil has to be rich, nutrient, nourishing, it has to have moisture, it has to have this care, sunlight, all these things for that plant to grow. But if your soil is toxic and it's got mold in there and it smells and it's got all this other stuff, the plant is not going to flourish. So if you could think of culture and climate as your plant and your soil, that will help you look around and say, okay, where does our soil need to shift? Or where does our plant need to grow and what's contributing to that? In behavior, in behavior therapy, we always look at the environment. What's the trigger? The environment triggers behavior. And all of these too come from beliefs. What we believe about something also then affects our environment and our behaviors. So when we're talking about culture and climate, we want to look at that environment and the behaviors. Does the environment create the trigger that gives us the behavior that we have? Is it supporting continually bad behavior? And how do we change that? We have to shift. We have to take some action. And that's not always as easy as it sounds, but the biggest part is we just have to, one, recognize it, two, talk about it, and then see what our employees, our team members really need. The interplay of how it works. Culture creates foundation. And so we have to look at those values. And climate expresses that culture. It's that day-to-day experience. If your company is saying we value teamwork, and yet it's competitive and they have everybody's individual sales goals on the wall, and only the people that reach the top get recognized, and the people who hit this mark are going to all go out for dinner, but the people who are over here, they get to clean the trash cans, right? Is that fostering teamwork? The climate expresses the culture. Misalignment causes the friction, but alignment drives success. When culture and climate align, it's a force multiplier. Engagement increases, innovation flows, people stay, not because they need a paycheck. They stay because they feel valued, appreciated, and they're contributing. What they are doing contributes to the common goal. If your culture again says we value teamwork, but the climate is competitive and fear-based, that's a mismatch. Culture sets the intention, but climate reflects the experience. So think about climate as that employee experience. How do people experience your culture daily? It's the difference between a poster that says collaboration and a meeting where people actually feel safe contributing. This misalignment climate can distort or even destroy the best intended culture. In your meetings, when we know that when people are passionate and really excited about something, it can come across as aggressive or anger or domineering, overly assertive. And so it's really about how we communicate those things. How do we communicate our passion in a more effective way? And many companies will invest in DISC profile, personality profile, communication profile, which will help teams look at how do you communicate, how do you receive communication, and then it teaches teams how to actually flex or adjust based on who they're speaking with. So we mentioned a little bit about how I consult for Instaco Global Logistics, and we had the DISC assessment completed on the team members. And actually what we did was we ran around and on everybody's little cubicle or their office, it actually had their DISC profile, how they communicate. And so DISC looks at direct, uh, I think it's like innovative, oh my gosh, now I've drawn a blank. Social and then collaborative. So it has to do with how are you direct? Are you like a cheerleader person? Are you somebody that needs to have just a lot of accolades, a lot of showing that you're not making a mistake? Do you need to be the peacemaker? So this is how it works. And so you have the assessment and then you get the types of people. And so we put it around so that you could tell, okay, this leader is directive. That means they're going to want the facts and they're going to communicate to the facts, and they might be abrasive when they're speaking to me. So this leader, I know this about this leader. And if the leader knows that I am very much wanting to be appreciated, I love excitement and cheering on of people. And if you come across at me abrasive, I'm going to go in this little turtle shell, right? So if that leader knows that about me, then we can flex. We can say, okay, I can see where they're coming from and how they're communicating. They can see how I'm communicating. So we want to foster that collaboration. And so sometimes when we're in a meeting and we're super passionate, instead of saying something like, well, you're wrong or your data's incorrect, we can stop for a minute, look at the person and say, I appreciate your point of view. My information is different, and this is what I've found through my research and my experience, and this is what I think. So it's really about how do we honor that they're collaborating, honor that they're sharing without biting their head off and jumping down on them. Because if we do that, then they're going to go back in their shell and they're not going to speak up the next time. So if we say teamwork, we work together and we value teamwork and we value your input, but their experience is continually chopping their head off every time they say something, now you have that misalignment. So research from Gallup shows that only 1 in 3 employees strongly agree that they are recognized and appreciated at work. So recognition is a little different from appreciation. Recognition, we typically think about, we're recognizing our employees. We have employee of the month, we have employee of the year, we have happy birthday cake, that's recognition. But appreciation really gets down to how they are, how they feel in their work that shows you actually care about them as a person. And so when there's people who don't feel that they are recognized or appreciated at work, that's a climate problem. If you've ever launched a new initiative like wellness or DEI or training and it doesn't stick, you need to ask, was the climate actually ready for this? Perfect example is wellness programs. They tend to fail. And the reason is because most places now really recognize a need for wellness programs. However, that environment, that soil, is not nurturing to support a wellness plan. For example, if you have a high stress climate and you're talking about wellness, but you don't have the opportunities for wellness, then it's not going to grow. A perfect example of this is unlimited PTOs. You have lots of companies that issue unlimited PTO. We want you guys to have unlimited PTO. Well, here's the problem with a lot of people with unlimited PTO. They feel guilty taking the PTO, and if they take it, there's nobody that's going to do their work while they're gone. And when they come back, now they have 7 times the amount of work to catch up on because nobody stepped in to help them. That is a misalignment between saying we value wellness and not doing anything to adjust the stressful situation. If you are in alignment and congruent, then when somebody takes the PTO, you would have backup staff, you would have other people come in, you would reallocate their work, or you would empower them to reallocate their work. So when they do have a break, they actually get to completely decompress and not be fearful when they come back that now they're going to be hitting that hamster wheel faster than it ever could go before. In the 5 love languages of appreciation in the workplace, we're reminded that we not only have to recognize people in our language, but we have to recognize them in theirs. And this can be where we look at, how does somebody feel appreciated? Do they like having words of affirmation? Do they like the quote unquote attaboys? Hey, you're doing a great job. Or do they feel that when you say, hey, you're doing a great job, that that's just lip service? It depends on the person. Some people love to hear that they're doing great. Some people love to hear that they're doing great in front of other people. Some people don't like to hear it in front of other people. Other people would rather have an appreciation if you gave them a Starbucks gift card, or took them to lunch, or gave them that extra day of PTO and covered their work while they were gone, right? So we have to look at how we're communicating, what we're doing, and what we're saying. They need to match. Another impact is toxic leadership. It's often said that people don't leave a company, they leave their boss. Managers contradict a lot of times the stated cultural values. I'll give you an example. In this company, we they were looking at their being able to contribute more to their medical plans. They wanted to be able to help add a benefit to their employees and to contribute. And medical plans are actually based on, there's this great formula where they base them on the health and age of the population that work at in a company. And that's where those premiums come from. And so, in order for the company to get a better rate, they needed to do a wellness checkup. They needed the employees to be at a better score so they could be able to have a better rate and they could contribute, the company could contribute more. So they stated at the beginning of the year what they wanted to do. Now, the reason this was important was because in an employee survey, the number one thing the employees wanted was to have better benefit offers, better medical benefit options. And so they had a town hall meeting and said, in order for us to have better options, this is what we need to be doing. So they were sharing the goal. Here's what we need to do. Is everybody on board? Yes, we all want this. And so they instituted no sugary snacks in the office except for the monthly birthday celebration. Any and all meals that were going to be brought into the office as lunch and learns or dinners were all going to be healthy choices, that they were going to pay or reimburse employees for gym memberships with proof that they actually went. And they were going to offer they actually would bring in quarterly have a spa day. So they had a massage therapist come in once a quarter to do that. And so this is what the plan was. And when a customer called and said, hey, we're going to drop by donuts for your team, the response that they were told to do was say, hey, you know what? We really appreciate gifts, especially of food, but our company has adopted an initiative this year to really help everyone support it in their wellness goals. So if you want to bring us food, we'd love it, but could you pick up a bowl of fruit? Right? So everybody was on board except that one director. That one director who was not on board. And how did everyone know she wasn't on board? Because when the executive team was out of the office, she would bring in donuts for her team. When she took them out to lunch, they went for pizza and burgers. She constantly had on her desk a bowl of candy, and when people went into the office, she would hand them 2 or 3 pieces. This is toxic leadership. This is undermining the corporate initiative and sabotaging all the employees that stated in the survey they wanted a healthier environment because they wanted better medical choices. So that right there shows toxic leadership. And then the other component here is we have that lived experience. And that climate, again, trumps any type of culture that you can see. Appreciating your team in the way they want to be appreciated by asking them through anonymous surveys, talking to them on one-on-ones, that improves that climate. Consistency sustains the culture. Conversely, when climate aligns with the culture, teams flourish with creativity, loyalty, and trust. And if you've ever read or heard of the 5 dysfunctions of a team, trust is the number one component for a team to be functional. If you do not have trust, you do not have a team. So how do you assess both culture and climate? You don't have to hire a consultant right away. And you don't just assess what's written. You have to listen. You have to observe. You're listening to the lived experience. You're observing those behaviors, those patterns of behaviors on your team. Now, of course, I mentioned anonymous surveys. You can, and this can be low key. If you do not have an HRIS system where you can send out anonymous surveys, you can use any of the online platforms. You can use SurveyMonkey. You can send out a Google form. You can use a Wufoo form. All of these are very low to no cost, and you can send in anonymous surveys. making them online makes it a lot easier and people are most likely to do them. If we hand them out on paper, people think, oh gosh, they're going to see my handwriting. They're going to know it's me. So using an online form and just sending it out to them and then making sure that they are very well aware that it is anonymous. You don't know who did it. You don't know where they did it. You just get it. You just get their information back. So gathering that type of feedback and then conducting a leadership behavior audit and observing the actions of your team, of your leadership team, of your executive team. Just watch and see how they interact. Are their words and matching their actions, and are those words and actions matching those stated values? You can hold listening sessions where you just create this safe space for feedback. And in a safe space, there are a few things you can do. You most of the time when we do a safe space, we give somebody an object. It can be whatever you want. When that person is holding the object, they get to say what it is that they need to say, and nobody's interrupting and everybody's just listening. We're holding the space for them to share what they want to share. And then when they're finished, they put the object down, and then the feedback, the other people can participate by saying, I didn't know you felt that way. Could you expand on that a little bit more? They can ask questions. But letting them share what it is and not taking things personally. Again, we have to aerate the soil, if you will. And so because if we keep packing stuff down, we're just going to make the soil super tight and that mold and that muck is going to happen. So we need to aerate the soil. And by having listening sessions where people can share what they want to say, get it, if you will, off their chest and out in the open, that's when you can have good dialogue and good discussions. And also doing an alignment check. Do your policies back up what you're saying? Do your policies go along with your culture? And if they don't, you need to change your policies. In my research, one of the biggest components, the root cause of moral distress was restrictive policies, whether they were written or unwritten. So you have to look at your policies. Are your policies supporting collaboration? Are they empowering your employees to make decisions, to handle customer complaints, to give feedback? So you have to look at those. So again, when you can always just ask, when's the last time someone asked for your opinion? You can also ask, what does a good day look like and feel like here at work? We spend more time with the people we work with than our own families. Don't you want to get along? Don't you want it to be a nurturing environment, a feel-good place? So when we start with listening, we just ask, what's one word that describes how it feels to work here right now? And then looking at those patterns of behaviors. The goal isn't to fix people. Believe me, we're not here to fix people. This is a place of work. We have a common goal. We need to align so that we can get things done. But having that appreciation and recognition that we are people first and employees second, then we can create the systems that will really reflect the values that we say we have or we say we want in our workplace. So what are some of the signs of misalignment? Hands down, high turnover. Again, people will leave a company, will not leave a company, they'll leave a boss. They'll leave the leadership. So in my consulting role with the trucking company, there is a lot of turnover with drivers, with commercial truck drivers. There's a lot of turnover. And so this company, what we worked on was really listening to the drivers and what's going to help them feel like they're part of the company. So a lot of times drivers, they're out on the road, so they don't feel like they're part of a company because literally everything happens through text and phone and email, and they are displaced. And so what we looked at was many of the times when interviewing the drivers, they would say at their previous work, they felt like a number. They weren't seen. What they had to say didn't matter. What they shared about the equipment didn't go anywhere. And so by listening to them and then turning around and looking at the corporation, what are some things that we could do to change that to where our culture, where we say safety is important and we operate with integrity and excellence and we operate with grit. How is that going to be reflected to everyone on the team? Not just the people that come into the office, but those remote workers. And if you will, truck drivers are remote workers. So looking at that and asking them. And so what we ended up doing was what we recognized that they needed a chance to come in and they needed a chance to connect. So we made quarterly safety meetings that were typically done online. We brought them in-house. One Saturday, 2 hours, once a quarter. Come in, connect, talk to the leadership team. Leadership team needed to be at the meetings. And one of the things that we changed was we actually lived the statement. You are so important here that the owners of the company know your name. And so whenever we brought in a driver, we hired a driver on, they got to meet the leadership team. They got to meet the owners. And the owner actually goes out to the yards where they'll pick up their trailer and the loads from time to time and engage with the truck drivers. And because of that, turnover significantly decreased. In fact, mainly because of age, the first driver they ever hired still works for them today. The other two drivers that they first hired, they aged out, they retired. So they have a lot of the drivers still working for them today, and that's 10 years. And many of the drivers that left actually came back because they knew that the culture had changed. Another sign of misalignment is that unused open door policy. Does your boss say, I have an open door policy, but the door is always closed? That's not an open door policy. An open door policy is the door is always open unless you come in and you want to close the door and have a discussion with me. So if you're saying to your team you have an open door policy, your door needs to always be open, except when they're in their meeting, right? Because what happens is if you have a closed door, but you're telling them it's open, there's that fear and that contradiction. Do you have mission statements on the wall, but it's not evident in your workflow? I love it when I walk into an office place and they're proudly display their mission statement on the wall, like right when you walk in, like it's this tattoo of their children or their parents on the wall. Like, here we are. But yet you turn around and you look at the team and it feels icky. It just feels like everybody's annoyed and it's just not a great place. But here's this fantastic mission statement in great graphic letters, right? We cannot just throw words on a wall and think that it makes a difference. They're not decoration, they have to be in practice. And another sign of misalignment is that team burnout, despite any good intentions. So again, actions contradict wellness claims. You have to actually model the behaviors you want to see. You have to ask yourself, do people trust what you're saying? Do they trust that your actions are reflecting what you're saying? If the value on the wall is trust, but employees are copying supervisors on every email, that's a climate of fear and not trust. If you are a leader and you are being CC'd on every conversation that your team is having, that is out of alignment with trust. If you have silence in your meetings, burnout despite the perks, or people hesitating to speak up are all signs that the climate is not safe. It's not nurturing. So I want to encourage you to be brave enough to ask. Ask your team, is the culture we say we have the same as the one our team feels every day? And if not, you need to make some changes. You start with leadership modeling. What gets rewarded gets repeated. Leadership behavior is the single most powerful lever for alignment. If your leadership team, if your executive team is not aligned, it's going to trickle down to everything else. So it has to start with leadership. It needs to be in alignment. People look towards leadership to understand what is acceptable behavior. Are you saying that we need to have a more of a dressed up environment, but yet your leadership team still comes in tennis shoes and sweatpants? That's out of alignment. It's almost like it's do as I say and not as I do. It has to match. We have to look at rituals. How do your meetings start? If you're telling your team that they need to be punctual, but yet you are late and not honoring their time, they will model the same behavior when they have to see a client for client meetings. It's the small details, remember? How do you celebrate your wins? All of these things shape that climate. Those small rituals create the rhythm. Are you celebrating? Do you have Monday wins? Do you have daily check-ins? Do you have team shout-outs? All of these things shape climate. But again, what is the way that that individual team member wants to be appreciated? And make them intentional. Maybe this team member likes shout-outs, but not completely in across the company. They just like them in their team, right? So getting to know that part. The psychological safety isn't just about being nice. It's about creating the space for healthy discussions, dissent, and innovation, fostering the creativity. You need to be explicit. This is what our culture looks like in action. And then you have to reflect that in your hiring, in your onboarding, and in your reviews. Performance reviews isn't just about a review about that individual employee's performance. It's a review of how that climate is affecting that individual. They are giving you feedback about the company that's either hindering or nurturing their performance. So, how do we have an action plan? Right? We start small. Realignment does not require a complete and total overhaul. Sometimes it does, but for the most part, we start with something small. So, one, we don't want to feel overwhelmed. Alignment is about intentional progress, not perfection. And you can include that in your conversations with your leadership team and your direct reports. You can say, this is a process. It's about making progress. We're not going to get it perfect. One of the companies that I work with, they have a core value of excellence, and they literally say, it's what we strive for. We know we're not going to get there every day, but that's the end goal. That's what we are working towards. And excellence means if we make a mistake or we miss the mark, we're going to own up to it and we're going to correct it, and then we move on. We learn from it and we move on. And that's what this is about. Realignment is all, an alignment is about intentional progress. So conduct a mini audit. Assess your culture and your climate. Again, you can use the QR code. I'll give it to you again here at the end. And you can look at it at your team. Conduct the audit. Then choose one value you deeply care about, or you perceive that your company deeply cares about, or if you're the owner of the company, what it is that you really want to convey and why you started this business. Then ask, is this visible in our systems? Is it felt in every fiber of what we do? Or are these just slogans? You start where you have the influence in your meetings, in your team, in your own communication style. Many times we think, how can I affect the whole entire corporation? Or how can I have such an impact on this team? I'm just one person. You change yourself. You change your behaviors. You model it. It'll be a little difficult at first because you'll be the only one, but you will become infectious because everybody will be, wow, that's amazing. I want that. You'll see the little roots of their plant going into your soil to get nourishment. And by doing that, you will be an invitation to others. And what does a healthy culture look like to you? What's the one thing that we could do better? Ask your teammates, ask your direct reports. You have one system like feedback or recognition, and then realign that to your values. And then get feedback regularly. It doesn't have to be quarterly. Performance reviews for your company and your culture don't have to be once a year. You can do them repeatedly. And if you do them repeatedly, you'll be able to make those changes a lot more quicker, and you'll have a greater impact instead of doing it at the end of the year when you're trying to win somebody back, or they've given you their 2 week notice, or they've just up and quit and walked out the door. You don't have a chance to make improvements and changes. So if you do the small assessments periodically versus once a year or at the end of when they're leaving, you'll be able to actually make those small adjustments instead of having to what they call rewriting the ship. Like your ship is sinking completely down and you're having to call in life jackets and you're having to call in lifeboats because it's going down. But if you had stopped and said, "Ooh, we have a small leak here. We should address that now," then you wouldn't have taken all that water and sunk. So invite that feedback regularly. Ask, what's the one thing that I can do different that would support team culture? And be transparent. Let your team see that you're working on it, that you're not always going to get it right. You are a work in progress, but you are committed. You are committed to aligning culture and climate. You're just not talking about it. You are doing it. Culture is strategic. Climate is emotional. Both are human. Wooden said that success is peace of mind from knowing you did your best to become the best that you're capable of becoming. And that applies to organizations too. As leaders, you have a responsibility to not only become your best, but to collaborate and contribute and empowers those that you interact with to also become their best. You don't need to be perfect, but you do need to be aware and intentional. When culture and climate align, your team doesn't just work, they believe, and that changes everything. Culture and climate are not soft skills, they are truly your strategic assets. You're building something long term here. Even if your business is small, the tone you set shapes what it becomes. View yourselves not just as business owners or managers or leaders, but as cultural architects, and watch those plants bloom. That's what I have for you all. I'm interested to see if they have any questions. Again, you do have the QR codes for you to access the Climate versus Culture Audit Tool.
This was so good. This was so helpful. You guys use that leave that up. I don't know if you can leave that final box up for just a minute, so that people can, if they need to kind of like zoom in and all that kind of stuff, get that going there. That was really so helpful, and it's a topic I don't think we've ever covered here in all the sessions that we've done. I mean, the library, you guys, that Sarah National has is quite robust. There are so many different topics. You could get this full-on business education just by watching these YouTube videos, and this is one we hadn't covered. So here's just sort of like and you touched on this a little bit, but this is a little bit more just maybe in a practical sense. Let's say somebody is like, okay, I want to recognize my employees. I want to appreciate my employees, but I have like negative budget. Like I am just getting started. I just have a few employees and I want to recognize them and appreciate them. What's the best course of action?
The absolute best thing to do is to go up to each individual employee, just pop over to them like, "Hey, you know what? I was really curious. What makes you feel appreciated at work?" The research actually shows that gifts are the least way people feel appreciated. The least way. I will tell you, and all the healthcare workers that I've been researching and talking to, For them to have pizza brought in or cookies, they hate it.
Yeah, and it's like
That's
that's money spent. It's like,
that's
yeah,
money
it's not.
spent. Exactly. It's a lot of money. And companies, they want to do stuff, but it's like, okay, that meant nothing to me. So asking, and here's the thing, and also behavior, right? If they're not going to tell you, they're like, oh, I don't really need appreciation. Well, first of all, they're lying. They don't
Everybody
feel safe,
does.
right? Everybody does. And so so you have to watch. And so perfect example, in this company that I was helping, this gentleman, he was their top employee and he was getting ready to walk out the door. He was like, he was on it. He was so good. And he was just like, I'm just burning out. And so we had the conversation, just said, okay, hey, I'm really curious. I really do want to know, what is it about that's burning you out? And he said, I don't have any time to do something fun with my family. So instead of giving him $100 bonus or, anything like that, they actually bought a family membership to the local zoo and gave him a day off to take his kids. So he got time, work time. So here's a day, take it. But also having that family membership,
Yeah.
he could go to the zoo on Saturday, Sunday, at night, the whole bit, and not have to worry about paying for it. It was on the company. And every time they would go to the zoo, they're like, oh, my company really cared about my family
Yeah.
and me. And that speaks more volumes. So that $100 was better spent on the one employee who really needed that versus spending $200 on pizza and cupcakes.
Totally. It's true. The shout it from the rooftops. Nobody, no, a few people, but most people don't want the junk food. Um, and the other thing too is it's like sometimes there'll be an after work thing, and it's like
I
you
want to go
feel bad.
home.
You feel bad not to go, but you were,
Because you want to go home. Like I've been with you guys all day. I want to go home. I want to see my family. I want to
yes,
exactly. And so that's the other thing too. So just asking your employees, hey, we're going to have a company event. Is it how would you feel if you had your family? My husband worked for a phenomenal company. Of course, it's been a long time ago, and they actually had two Christmas events, two holiday year-end events. One was family oriented, and the second was just the employees. And so you could go to both or you could just go to one. But it was a way of celebrating. And my kids, who are now in their 30s, talk about those events still to this day. And so, and that's all they did. They didn't do anything else for the rest of the year, but they did those two events. And for my kids still to talk about those, like, oh my gosh, that was really, remember when we did this? And they had this like, and it wasn't big things. Like there was, they had, a play day where they had like a magic show, it was like they had a magic show. And my kids were super excited about this magic show. So, but just by asking employees,
just by asking, that is such a missing component. Just the asking rather than assuming. Like, yeah, for me, it's always a day off. If anybody's watching or listening, it's always a day off. How can you appreciate me? A day off. To be with my family. I want to take my baby to little gym. I want to be the one to get my daughter dressed for ballet class. I want to do her bun. I want to sit through class. I want to talk to the other mothers and fathers, whoever. Like, yeah, but people wouldn't know that unless they asked me. You would think, oh, it's money. So it's really interesting. I think that's a great point that you brought that up, to just ask the people. And we did get a question here I wanted to kind of scroll up to. How would you deal? So this is more from the employee to boss management, but it seems like you have knowledge in this area too. How do you deal with the my way or the highway manager or boss? And listen, I don't even know if we have time for this. This
yeah.
probably is a whole nother session.
Yeah, so you have to, then you're asking yourself, what is it about this job that I like?
Yeah. Okay.
Why am I showing up here? Right? And if your boss is, and so what that sounds like to me in the disc is that's a D, that's a very direct person. It's my way or the highway.
Yep.
That is, and so you can share books. You can literally be like, hey, I'm reading this book on appreciation in the workplace, or you can talk to, if you have an HR, you can talk to them. But really, it's going to be about you and you showing up. Because if we reflect what we want, then the things will change. But you have to ask yourself, how long are you willing to be in that environment? How long are you willing to endure that. If you've been there a long time, you've really been enduring it for a long time and you kind of know how this boss is. And so you can talk to them by saying, "Hey, I need a few moments of your time. I really need to talk about something." But be prepared. They might say, "Well, you know what? It is the highway. There you go."
I've seen
And
that happen so many times.
and
Yeah,
it does.
people are like,
And it
wait.
can. And it can, but you have to value yourself and know what you bring to the workplace. Know the value that you have and be willing, go start looking for someplace else where you can be appreciated because you are not going to grow and flourish as an individual or a productive team member if the soil you're in is icky. And if you have a decent relationship with their boss, maybe you can have that little bit of conversation or talk to a coworker and be like, "Hey, how are you dealing with this?" Or "What do you perceive about our boss?" Or something to that effect. And you have to make that decision for your family. But whatever decision you make, you need to make it for you. You need to make it for you. Are you in a place where you can be appreciated, valued, and collaborated? One of the things when I'm interviewing people for other companies and they're hiring, that's the number one thing. What are you looking for in a work family? So if you're interviewing, say, "Tell me about your work family." Ask them, "How is your culture and your climate? How do they align?" I'm looking for a place to call my forever home. I'm looking for a place where I can fit and contribute. That's what most people are looking for. And so companies that aren't making that adjustment, I'm afraid they're not going to be around much longer.
Right. No, that's true. What about somebody who's thinking, gosh, the soil's not great here, but the schedule's good, the pay's good, and I'm just going to kind of ride this out. Is there ever a time when you just recommend, you know what, is that the find what works for you in this place?
What works for you in this place, and then make the adjustments to yourself. If you're not feeling appreciated and valued, look at your coworkers because the more you can say, "Okay, my coworker, I need to show appreciation to my coworker, or I need to collaborate a little bit more." Laterally,
So true.
if you start laterally, then it can become infectious in the group and then it will trickle out. Because when the environment changes, the plant that is toxic, it will leave.
Yeah. Because they don't feel comfortable
They
there.
don't feel comfortable. They're like, their way is not working. They're like, "There's too many happy people in this place. I cannot handle this place," right? Or they might see that, "Yeah, we're hearing what you're saying, but we're doing this over here anyway.
Yeah.
We're still meeting our objectives and our goals, and we're serving the customer, and we're productive and everything else," because your actions will speak louder than your words. So if you're in a place like, again, you have to make decisions that are based on your family. If you've got to put food on the table and this job is getting you food on the table, then you seek other ways that you can feel fulfilled. But I would laterally spread out. And then also, if you have anybody that's your direct report that are reporting to you, go deep that way. And eventually, what's over top of you, that's going to change. I will tell you, the toxic leader with the donuts and the sabotaging, she left.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Well, Anna, this has been my favorite session that you've done so far. And like I said, I've interviewed you and collaborated with you on this session multiple times. So thank you, thank you, thank you. If you loved what she taught, I mentioned that library of information that is out on YouTube, on Sarah National's YouTube channel. So you can search by name, you can find her other sessions. She always just has a lot of wisdom to impart. And the great news is that she's going to be back next week, same time, same place for the topic leadership that walks the walk. And I know that all of us want to be, having that in our circumference. We'll see you all next week, same time, same place. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you, Jenny.